Back in 1999, just as everyone and their grandmother was freaking out about the impending doom at the hands of the Y2K bug, Iron Maiden fans all over the world were freaking out over something much bigger. Bruce Dickinson and Adrian Smith had rejoined the band, and Yannick Gers would be staying on, so they would now have a really unique 3-guitar lineup. This decision came at just the right time as heavy metal was slowly starting to make a comeback. After a short tour in support of the Greatest Hits compilation and the not-so-great video game Ed Hunter, the band headed to Paris to record the highly acclaimed and very aptly named Brave New World. The album was released in May of the year 2000 after the Y2K bug turned out to be the world's most expensive false alarm, and just like that, Iron Maiden essentially went from being on the verge of irrelevance to reclaiming their place as one of the most important bands in heavy metal. If this is your first time here, welcome to Licks of the Beast. I'm Nico Falco. I've been playing guitar for almost 40 years, and this channel is all about guitar and heavy metal, from tutorials and playthroughs to gear talk and concert reviews. I hope you'll enjoy this 25-year retrospective of Brave New World, and that you'll stick around for more. This record was very well received by fans and critics, and it wasn't just a collection of 10 great songs, but also the payoff of the sound that they were working towards since the X Factor. After 2 albums of experimenting, and with the return of Bruce and Adrian, all of the elements finally came together to create something very unique that still sounded like Iron Maiden, without just going back to what worked for them in the 1980s. Now, aside from the classic lineup reuniting and the really cool 3-guitar approach, I believe there are 2 main things that make this album feel like a return to form. The first is the active role that Kevin Shirley had in producing the album. For one thing, he encouraged the band to record live off the floor, and that made things sound so much more alive and vibrant than the previous albums. He also worked on getting the 3 guitars sounding distinct and separate in the mix, and he had a hand in tightening up the song arrangements. And as a result, the album sounds really big and full, and the dynamics truly help make the songs more impactful. The second thing is that there's a cohesive feel and sound throughout the entire album, much like Seventh Son or Somewhere in Time. It's like a movie where world building plays an important role. The artwork, the color scheme, the tones, the subject matter of the lyrics, the sound, and the way the track list flows from the first song to the last. It really is cinematic in that sense. Guitar-wise, Brave New World has some really great moments. The riff and solo on the Wicker Man, the solos and the harmony section of the title track, Yannick's solos on Ghost of the Navigator and Blood Brothers, the 3 back-to-back guitar solos on The Fallen Angel, and Dave Murray's smooth, melodic phrasing all over the closing track, The Thin Line Between Love and Hate. There was a ton of excitement over Adrian's return, but I think Yannick might be the guy with the most standout guitar moments on this one. Okay, so to commemorate the album's 25th anniversary, what I want to do now is highlight 1 or 2 guitar parts from each of the album's 10 songs that I think are worth a closer look. Now, I don't want this to be too intense, so I'm not going to go too deeply into technique or music theory, but just showcase what's going on and why it works the way it does. And I'm sure that there will be moments where you're going to be thinking, hey Nico, why didn't you mention this part? So please do share your favorite guitar moment on Brave New World in the comments. It'll make for interesting discussions, and it's a cool way to celebrate this historic album. So the album opens with the first single, written by Smith, Dickinson, Harris, unsurprisingly, The Wicker Man. So there are a few things that make this song such a strong single. A simple, instantly recognizable main riff, an equally simple but very catchy chorus, excellent drumming, and a highly memorable guitar solo. Now, we did a deep dive into the solo earlier this year, and I will link to that video in the description and in the end screen for those of you who want to check that out, or if you want to watch it again. So now let's talk about the main riff. The idea is very simple. Palm muted chugging on the open low E string, and a catchy syncopation on the chords. The key to this riff is Adrian's picking technique, where he downpicks the muted pedal tone and uppicks the accented chords. It really does have a similar rhythm to Judas Priest's Running Wild. That was from the album Killing Machine, or Hellbent for Leather, which was released back in 1978. Just goes to show that a great riff is timeless. So the Wicker Man also features a wide open sing-along ending that makes it feel absolutely huge, especially live. This was the perfect track to announce Maiden's return to the top of the metal mountain. Ghost of the Navigator is next, and this one starts off with its dreamy and atmospheric intro that really sets up the song nicely. Now, from the first time I heard it, I immediately felt like I was on this old ship lost at sea at night with a bright moon. I'm still so much in awe of Iron Maiden's ability to always write music that sounds exactly like whatever it is that they're talking about. I've never heard any other band or artist even come close in that regard. So this song features some nice interplay between the three guitars, and actually this album has some of the band's best three guitar moments. The melodies are really catchy, and there are some really neat key changes in there. Most of it is in D minor, but then they shift to A minor in the pre-chorus, then to E minor for the first half of the chorus before landing back in D. And after Yannick's solo, you have this really intense interlude where the riff is played in different keys. First in E, then in F sharp, then in D, before it comes back to E and leads back to the chorus. On guitar, this kind of modulation is actually pretty simple. You just move the riff up or down the fretboard, but it only works if you land on the right notes and choose the right tonal centers. Now, they did something very similar in the instrumental section of To Tame a Land way back in 1983, but here they make it work by ending each phrase with what's called a 6-7 sequence. So if, for example, we're in the key of E minor, then E is your 1 chord, C would be the 6, and D is the 7. So a 6-7 sequence to the 1 would be C, D to E. This is very typical in classic heavy metal. So when they change key, they just double down on that final 7 chord and make that one the new tonal center. Now that's not the case when they go from D to F sharp, but what they do there is they just pivot off that C, so it's a tritone jump, which sounds super cool in the context of a heavy metal song. Now when they hit F sharp, the highest point of the section, Nicko McBrain picks up the pace on the kick drum, so it feels like the song is really pushing forward before he pulls it back with a drum fill that drops you right back to the chorus. Next up is the wonderful title track, Brave New World. This one is written by Dave Murray along with Steve and Bruce, and it's one of my favorite songs on the album. The lyrics and melodies are great, Bruce's vocal performance is excellent, and the chorus is just perfect. This song also features some fantastic 3 guitar moments, namely the intro and the post-solo interlude. So let's take a quick look at both those parts. So in the intro, Dave is playing a really melodic pedal point figure that goes like this. Yannick highlights the main melody of that part, like this. And his tone on these kinds of parts is always so thick. It's really something. Now, Adrian is playing a similar thing, but with chords to add atmosphere and breath to the whole section. Now in that interlude harmony, Dave is playing his line up here. Yannick is doubling that part an octave down, like this. And Adrian's part starts off a fifth down from Yannick's. I love that chromatic there. But then he moves that part up an octave, so it's now up a fourth, and they keep that lower part there as well, so you're getting this four-part harmony. The fourth song is the very powerful Blood Brothers. Now this one is a real heavy metal anthem that brings together fans from all over the world with its themes of solidarity and brotherhood. This one has a very recognizable feel, swaying in 6/4 time, which is rather unique for Iron Maiden and for metal in general. Now most of the song is made up of just 4 chords, E, G, C, and D. But the arrangement is quite progressive in the way that it changes feel multiple times, and the melodies are all absolutely magnificent. You could tell that a whole lot of work went into this one. In fact, this was a work in progress since the writing sessions for the previous album, Virtual 11. Guitar-wise, the standout moment for me is by far Yannick's solo. And if you've ever heard him play it live, you know just how great it is. Now, what always impresses me is just how precise Yannick's bends can be, and his tone on this solo is just huge. I really love the way he connects his melodic ideas together with this line here. Such a good line. The Mercenary is a simple, straightforward rocker. The song is based on a pedal point guitar riff, and at first, they play it entirely with single notes, like this. But during the verse rhythm, they play it with root third diads. Now that gives it a little more body and fullness to better support the vocal melody as it follows the riff somewhat closely. The arrangement of the guitar solo section is really cool as well. Dave Murray takes the first solo, staying within the song's fast tempo, which is like 200 beats per minute, and that's perfect for Dave with his smooth and fast legato playing. But when Adrian's solo comes in, the drums change to a halftime feel, and that frames Adrian's choppy, push-pull phrasing beautifully. Reminds me of what they did back on the song Killers in 1981. I always thought it was so awesome that they did that again 2 decades later. Up next is Dream of Mirrors. Now the lyrical theme of this song is quite dark and mysterious and has to do with recurring nightmares and the blurred lines between dream and reality. And once again, the music feels exactly like what the lyrics are saying. Let's just look at the main riff. This is a really neat rhythm where a gallop on the open A string is followed by 4 16th notes in a symmetrical pattern. So you go up a second, back to the original note, and down a third. And we're descending diatonically from E down to B. That pattern makes the riff feel somewhat hypnotic, allowing you to be pulled into the dreamscape described in the lyrics. The Fallen Angel is one of the heavier songs of the album, and this one is pure classic heavy metal. Starts off with an intro that is all triplets. And then it goes into this bouncy riff that combines 8th notes with 8th note triplets. And it's also got a super cool guitar solo section. as this is one of the very few times that Iron Maiden have ever done 3 guitar solos back to back. And I think that's a bit of a shame because it sounds so awesome, especially with the 3 very different styles being showcased so perfectly. So Adrian starts things off with a wah-wah soaked solo, and it's just classic Adrian, controlled and super tasty. So the first couple of bars are basically him setting the stage. One big bend that's tremolo picked and held with that wide vibrato. Then he goes into these triplet runs, so you get 3 different phases back to back, and it keeps rolling without ever sounding repetitive. And then he ends it with a quick 16th note flurry to a final bent note. Now Dave slides right in, just harmonizing on Adrian's final note, and instantly you remember why these two were such a great team in the 80s. So he mirrors Adrian's pacing, but with his own fluid legato style. So he holds a few notes, then some smooth triplets, and he finishes with a quick burst of 16th notes. From there, they go into a call and response thing for Yannick's solo. So Dave and Adrian play these chord stabs as the call, and Yannick hits the response with some Blackmore-esque harmonic minor licks played really fast. So his playing here is wild, almost frantic, but it still sounds clean and you could literally hear the power in his hands. Every note hits hard, even though he's blazing at full speed. That takes us to the Nomad. So like a lot of Iron Maiden songs, this one is in E minor, but it's not just your standard E minor riff. There are a few little twists in the harmony and melody that give it this Middle Eastern kind of vibe. So the very first riff is in the Phrygian mode, with that minor second interval really standing out. Now this is already quite exotic sounding, and then over the top of that, you get this octave melody playing B, C, and D, which are the 4th, 5th, and the flat 6th over E. Now here's where it gets interesting. The rhythm guitars and bass move over to a B chord. So instead of being the 4th, 5th, and 6th, they turn into the minor 7th, root, and minor 2nd. So that feels more narrow and more exotic. And then there's that middle section, which is super evocative. Now the chords you're hearing underneath are E minor at 9, C major 7th, and A minor 7th. And what makes it so soothing is that each chord extension acts as a leading tone to the next chord, so it just flows beautifully. Out of the Silent Planet was the album's second single, and that kind of tells you how little importance the band put on the idea of singles for this album. Not that I think it's a bad song, it's actually a song I never really have a desire to listen to, but whenever I do hear it, I find all sorts of cool little things in it, like the intro lick. It's all played on the high E string, and it's kind of like a broken Wasted Years, but in the best way. I also really like the funky interlude riff. It's got such a great groove, and this riff also becomes the accompaniment for Yannick's solo. The album closes with The Thin Line Between Love and Hate. Now, this deeply evocative piece features great melodies and thoughtful lyrics. It was written by Steve Harris and Dave Murray, who takes 4 really wonderful solos, and that last one is played by Yannick. Now for this song, I want to talk about the intro riff. The note choice combined with the grinding halftime feel makes it really melancholic, and that's right up my alley. So they do this really cool thing here where they make it feel like the tonal center keeps changing with every implied chord. So that's based on F sharp Aeolian, or F sharp minor. But at the 3rd bar, when they change to the E chord, they replace the major second, the G sharp, to to a minor second, a G natural. So it's like a Phrygian thing. Now with that small change and the chords underneath sort of framing each chord change, it sounds like the tonal center, or the key if you will, changes from F sharp to E to B to G to D and back to F sharp. Brave New World might not be my personal favorite of the band's post-2000 albums, but I do think it's a great record. Looking back 25 years later, it really set the stage for Maiden to reclaim their spot at the forefront of heavy metal and to hold on to it for the long run. And judging by their performance on their most recent tour, it feels like there's still plenty more to come.